Most people believe they know who they are. Ask them to describe themselves and they'll have an answer ready. I'm ambitious. I'm kind. I'm intelligent. I'm confident. But remove the audience. Remove the likes. Remove the compliments. Remove the attention. Remove the people who tell them who they are. And suddenly, the answer becomes much less clear. Because for many people, what feels like an identity is actually a collection of reactions from other people. And that's a strange thing to realize. You can spend years building a version of yourself without ever noticing that it was built for an audience. Not for you, for them. Most people don't know who they are without external validation, and the proof is hidden in ordinary moments. Notice what happens when you post something online. You check the response. Maybe once, maybe twice, maybe 20 times. The post itself hasn't changed. The words are the same. The photo is the same. The idea is the same. Yet your feelings about it change completely depending on how other people react. If people approve, you feel proud. If people ignore it, you question yourself. The content didn't change. Only the validation did. Which raises an uncomfortable question. How much of your self-worth actually belongs to you, and how much of it has been outsourced to other people? This problem begins much earlier than social media. It begins in childhood. Imagine a child drawing a picture. The child isn't drawing because they're trying to impress anyone. They're drawing because they enjoy drawing. The activity is the reward. Then slowly, something changes. Adults begin evaluating. That's beautiful. Good job. You're so talented. At first, this seems harmless, but over time, many people unconsciously learn a powerful lesson. Approval feels good. Disapproval feels painful. And eventually they stop asking, "Do I enjoy this?" They start asking, "Will people approve of this?" This shift is subtle. Yet it changes everything, because once approval becomes the goal, your attention moves away from yourself and toward the audience. Your decisions become performances, your personality becomes a strategy, and your identity becomes dependent on feedback. Psychologists sometimes describe this as the difference between an internal and external source of self-worth. When your self-worth is internal, you evaluate yourself based on your own values. When it's external, you evaluate yourself through the eyes of others. The problem is that other people's opinions constantly change. One group admires confidence, another group calls it arrogance. One person loves your personality, another person finds it annoying. If your identity depends on external approval, then your sense of self becomes unstable. You're forced to keep adjusting, keep performing, keep checking, keep seeking reassurance, and eventually, something strange happens. You become extremely skilled at being who people want you to be, but you lose touch with who you are. This explains why so many people feel lost during major life transitions. A student graduates and suddenly feels empty. An employee leaves a prestigious job and experiences an identity crisis. A relationship ends and someone feels like they've lost themselves. From the outside, it looks irrational, but beneath the surface, something important has disappeared. Validation. The applause stopped. The role ended. The audience left. And now they're standing alone with a question they've never really answered. Who am I when nobody's watching? Most people think loneliness comes from being physically alone, but some of the deepest loneliness comes from not knowing yourself. You can be surrounded by friends, family, co-workers, and followers, and still feel disconnected, because connection with others cannot replace connection with yourself. And many people have spent so much time adapting to expectations that they've forgotten what their own preferences even are. Ask someone what movie they genuinely enjoy. Not the movie they're supposed to enjoy, not the movie that sounds intelligent, not the movie that fits their image, just the movie they personally love. The question is surprisingly difficult. The same thing happens with careers, relationships, hobbies, opinions, even dreams. Many desires aren't really ours. They're inherited, borrowed from parents, copied from peers, absorbed from culture. We spend years chasing goals without asking who wanted those goals in the first place. And because everyone around us is doing the same thing, the illusion feels normal. Nobody notices. Imagine an actor who spends decades playing a role. Every day they wear the costume, speak the lines, follow the script. Eventually, they become so familiar with the character that they forget where the character ends and they begin. Something similar happens in real life. We play the role of the successful person, the funny person, the responsible person, the attractive person, the smart person, the people pleaser, the rebel, the achiever, the victim, the caretaker. The role becomes so familiar that it feels like reality. But roles are not identities. They are adaptations. And adaptations can become prisons when they're mistaken for the self. This is why external validation is never truly satisfying. It feels like the solution, but it behaves more like a drug. The relief is temporary. The mind immediately asks for more approval, more attention, more evidence that you're worthy. The satisfaction never lasts because validation doesn't answer the deeper question. It only distracts from it. People assume that confidence comes from receiving enough praise. But real confidence often emerges when praise becomes unnecessary. Not because you stop appreciating approval, but because your identity no longer depends on it. The deepest shift happens when you realize something simple. You were never meant to discover yourself through an audience. An audience can observe you. It cannot define you. Other people can describe you. They cannot determine who you are. Their opinions are reflections, not foundations. And reflections change depending on the mirror. The person who truly knows who they are isn't the one receiving the most validation. It's the one who can sit alone, without applause, without attention, without approval, and still recognize themselves. Not perfectly, not completely, but honestly. Because identity isn't something given to you by the world, it's something discovered underneath the noise of the world. And perhaps that's why so many people feel lost. Not because they lack a self, but because they've spent so much time listening to everyone else's voice that they can no longer hear their own. The question was never whether people understand you. The real question is much stranger. After all the roles you've played, after all the approval you've chased, after all the versions of yourself you've created for other people, would you recognize who you are if nobody was there to tell you?